On this episode of Alex and Elena Doing Ductwork, we're installing a whole house dehumidifier. We'll walk through our strategy for planning out the ductwork, struggle through getting it in place.
The first round didn't go so well.
We overcome adversity and fixed our duct woes.
And mounting, wiring, and plumbing the unit. In the words of Matt Reisinger, let's get going. Along with our ERV, this machine is the second piece of our indoor air quality puzzle. This is a whole house dehumidifier, the Broen B70, 70 pints per day capacity. Broen was kind enough to send this unit out to support the project. Today we're talking about why we wanted to put a whole house dehumidifier in and walk through the entire install process start to finish.
The climate zones in the United States vary depending on where you're located. We live in a climate zone of 4A, which is considered to be mixed humid. So that means that we experience both a summer and a winter with plenty of rainy days. And with rain comes humidity.
In the hottest times of the year, such as the peak of summer, our heat pump air conditioner will take care of all the dehumidification. We won't need to run this unit.
Actually, now that we've started everything up, we found it runs plenty in the summer as well. The heat load in the house combined with an airtight and well-insulated envelope means the AC doesn't need to run long enough to keep the humidity levels low. So the dehumidifier has been a fantastic supplement to the AC. Plus, it allows us to keep a slightly higher indoor temp that still feels really comfortable with low humidity.
But in the shoulder seasons, it's a totally different story. It's too cold to run the air conditioning, but it's still rainy and humid outside, which leads to indoor discomfort and high humidity. High levels of indoor humidity are detrimental not only to comfort, but also indoor air quality and building health. Too high of moisture levels could lead to mold and bacteria growth in places that you can't even see, which could impact your long-term health. So that's why we wanted to put this little guy in. At this stage of the construction process, it's pretty easy with all the walls and ceilings open. We are going to be installing a dedicated wall return for this in a central part of the house, and we will be feeding the supply right into the supply trunk of our main duct system shared with our primary heat pump. Let's go over the plan of how we're gonna mount this and where we're gonna mount it. It's going to be a little bit trickier because we've decided to put a whole house sprinkler system in. So there's going to be a very large 300-gallon water tank here, and I've actually put marks on the walls where that's going to sit. So I'm going to have to mount this up sort of above this, and it's going to be just discharging right into our supply trunk. So that'll actually work out well. Our supply trunk is up there in a soffit, and we need to drop the dedicated return basically vertically somewhere right around here. So the first step is going to be putting in that return while the unit is not in our way. Then we'll build some sort of stands to set it on up here. Another critical part of dehumidifiers is obviously they pull water out of the air, and that water needs a place to drain. So these are our condensate drains coming from our mini split. Thinking ahead to this dehumidifier install, I put a Y here so that I can add to this drain. I'm gonna put another Y so I can have a clean out on the top, and the dehumidifier drain will connect right to here.
One thing that's not talked a lot about in the residential building community in the United States is indoor air quality. This is something that we're hoping to create some awareness around with our channel, because while you are in a new construction build, this is the optimal time to put in some of these systems such as an ERV or dehumidifier. And this is something that can't be easily upgraded in the future, such as the countertops or tile backsplash. Those are things that you can upgrade down the road. But when it comes to HVAC and your building envelope, those are things you have to plan for up front.
A few months earlier, when we were roughing in for the main HVAC system, I went ahead and cut the wall stack holes as well for the dehum and the ERV. Just used a 3.5-inch hole saw and a Sawzall to make a hole for the 8-inch round oval for the wall stack.
This unit has 8-inch round supply and return, so we will be using 8-inch round duct accordingly. Got to dig into the old duct pile. I feel like a lot of owner builders can relate. I bought this ductwork like 8 months plus ago, I want to say. It's been sitting here in our garage. It's been getting dusty. And before we've been installing it, we've been cleaning it. So in the ERV video, I used the poor man's method of a dry rag and just reaching my arm down in some of this duct. But we have since made an upgrade. Check this out. Elena found herself a new little tool.
This is a lamb's wool duster. There are a lot of dusters out there that are made of plastic, essentially. So I wanted something that was natural materials because I'm all about sustainability. So this is actually made out of lamb's wool, and you can buy it at Home Depot, but it's a family-run business and they're made in the USA.
This issue is pretty exclusive to owner builders or people doing a lot of their own work because things just tend to sit for a lot longer than they typically would. We spent the majority of the warm season doing all of the outdoor tasks such as siding and stone veneer, and Duct work and some of the indoor stuff just kind of got put on hold, but now we're getting around to it, but we got to clean all the sawdust out of our ducts. There we go. This is a fiber reinforced water-based duct mastic that I'm using to seal these pipes up. Also got some SF686 mastic tape, but that stuff's really expensive. It's like $30 something a roll. Actually probably closer to $40 a roll. This water-based mastic, however, is about $10 or $15 for the whole gallon bucket. So where I can, I like to use this to seal the seams, just to save on that really expensive, really nice tape though. You get what you pay for. On things like these round elbows, there's no real good way to do this with tape either. You pretty much need the brush-on mastic. Just applying it on there real thick, and this coating should help air seal this pretty darn well. That's really weird looking with the reflections.
Do you line up the mastic or does it matter?
Doesn't really matter that much.
It just probably makes it easier to put it in. There we go.
Wiggle and push. There we go. You're good.
Work, 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 work.
We need 3 screws, symmetrically opposite, about 120 degrees apart. If you only had 2 screws in the sides, it would hinge, but now it can't. Okay, that's about where I want it.
Okay. Right now we're just mocking everything up. After we're done mocking it up, we'll tape it and put insulation on it.
All right, so it's 24 from pipe to pipe, but we got to remember our engagement depths. So in this case, it's going to engage roughly 1.75 inches. Same here, so I'm going to add 24 plus 3.5 inches, so 27.5 is what I'll measure this to, and we're going to crimp both ends. In general, the crimped end should be pointing towards the airflow. This is a return, so the air is coming down and going that way. So we want all of the crimped ends pointing that way. But with the boots, they're not really meant to be crimped and going into a duct pipe. So in each run, there's at least one joint where it's against the flow, but in general, best practice, point the crimps towards your airflow. Get it started.
Oh, there we go.
Yep. These ducts are technically running in the conditioned envelope. We're going to be conditioning the garage to probably within 10 degrees of the living space above it year round. So I'm not too worried about a ton of heat loss through the ducts, but it's just best practice to avoid any potential condensation that might form in or outside the duct if there is a pretty big temperature and moisture difference. These will also be basically surrounded with rock wool batt in the joist cavities. So there's really not going to lose any sort of heat to the garage space. The whole floor platform is going to be full of rock wool. But this double bubble polyethylene does a nice job at just serving as an extra vapor barrier and just another layer of insulation right up against the duct. Holy smokes. Yep.
Do you need help picking it up?
Oh, I don't know, maybe.
It kind of works good tucking the insulation in like that. It kept the dirt or the dust out when you pushed it through the hole.
Can you at all get that?
You got to lift it up level and then push.
Can you reach it?
Not yet.
How much further?
You got to lift it up your end. It doesn't look leveled. There you go. Almost.
That should be about all it needs to go.
Okay.
Actually, it should probably come back my way a little bit, but we'll see.
Okay. I'm not touching it. Make sure it's in the correct orientation.
It's not ready yet.
Okay, well, before we connect it to the next connection point, I'll take your trash. Oh, and he throws it on the ground.
What?
I said, I'll take your trash, and then you threw it on the ground.
I was more focused on the tape than the trash.
Flash me. Just kidding.
I could. I'm not sure how YouTube would like that though.
Those are cool stickers. I like those stickers.
Did you notice that it's a piece of flashing?
Oh no, that's cool.
Oop. These 8-inch ovals and the 8-inch round have the same exact circumference. Who would have thought?
So does that mean the airflow does not decrease, or it does because of the shape?
it does decrease, unfortunately.
Or does it speed up?
Well, if you go back to engineering school, remember A1V1 equals A2V2? All right, ready for installation.
These pants like shrunk, I think.
Now they're flood pants. Hope we didn't cut that slightly too long.
Take two, don't let it fall from the sky.
Yeah, I took my eye off this for a second and it fell right out of the dang ceiling. Okay, I gotta put this up through the floor first. Can that move at all?
It's against the white pipe.
Why do we make this so gosh darn tight? It's gotta move like literally like a ½ inch. Almost fell down again. Got it that time though.
The first round didn't go so well, and we decided that our tolerances are a little bit too tight, and we're gonna cut one of the pipes.
We just didn't get the engagement we needed to clear the drain pipe over there. All right, take 4, we have this thing down again. The problem this time is we got it up there, and the angle of this is not perfectly 90 degrees. This is a 3 1/4 inch wide oval, so it takes up like the entire 2x4 wall, and it's like leaning out of the 2x4 wall. So the only way to fix this is to unfasten all this and slightly tilt it that way so that it will be straight in the wall. These are just the minor details that if you don't think about 8 steps ahead, you're gonna get bit in the butt. To disturb this in the least severe way possible, I'm gonna try to just take 2 screws out of this oval and then push the one side of this oval down, which will effectively cock it like that. The problem is the super mastic tape that we put on is going to really stick this joint together even when I take the screws out. So we'll see how far this gets us.
The plan was to just put up this one piece of duct tonight, and it has turned into a big project.
Yep, things never go as easy as you think they will. Okay, 2 screws didn't work. Had to unfasten the whole thing, unfortunately, cut all the tape. But literally, this is all the difference was. There's where it was, there's about where it should be. That's all it takes to really screw you up. Let's put it back together and put it all back up there.
Georgie says, "Oh, where's my snack?"
Oh, what's that? Oh, what you got there, Dad? What you got there? Nope, too late.
We are almost done.
We have overcome. We've overcome adversity and fixed our duct woes. These are the 2 oval pipes for the dehumidifier and the ERV. I'm gonna be sharing a grill for this. It's gonna span both of these stud bays, but it will have 2 separate ducts for each of the pieces of equipment. Here's what the stack boot looks like up close. 8-inch oval coming into a 6x14 rectangle, and there are these little flanges that flap out and gives you a ½ inch reveal so that the drywall comes out flush with the edge of this boot, and you use these little holes to nail it to the stud. This is return air, so air is going to be flowing into it like this. Therefore, I want to crimp this boot into the oval so the crimp is in the same direction as the airflow and keeps things smooth. I'm gonna set these all at 12 inches above the subfloor so they're nice and even all the way down the hallway. There's 4 going down this hallway. So I'd like them to look somewhat like they were planned at the right height. This is just sitting on top of the oval pipe now, which of course I've covered with a plastic bag to keep insulation, dust, and crap out of there. So it looks like I need to take about 2 inches off this before I crimp it. That way I can get it to the right height, same as this guy. Not exact science, but this is how I found the most consistent way to take off. In this case, I did decide a little bit less than 2 inches. I'm gonna go 1 inch to start, figuring on about 1.25 inches of engagement depth. I found the way for the most like factory looking crimp is to do a bunch of really deep ones, like 1 inch apart, and then come back and do some kind of like little shallow guys in between this. If you do deep all the way around, it really crimps the thing in, like to the point where
It might even be restricting some airflow because it's less than an 8-inch oval. But I found this is kind of a good medium. They do make these little zip tools that you put on a drill that makes like a factory crimp. Thought about getting one of those, but they're kind of expensive. So for a first time duct installer, I felt it probably wasn't worth it. So I'm gonna go ahead and throw some screws in this thing. I'm putting them kind of like right at the round over here because this is like fully taking up all the wall space. So I don't want to put another screw in like right here that will hit the drywall. In fact, I might even need to push this a little bit to adjust it. That was an issue when we stuck this up here originally. It was not straight in the wall, and this is 3.5 wide. This is 3.5 wide. So if it's leaning at all, that's a problem. Easy to check, just throw this up against it. Yeah, this is protruding a little bit. I might have to adjust this. Unfortunately, Elena went through and already sealed them all with fire caulk. This stuff dries like hard as a rock. I actually really don't like it because it just kind of chips off and flakes off. As the house moves in the seasons, I'm sure it's gonna crack and let air through anyway, so I don't even get the point. I prefer Big Stretch. I had done the majority of the openings in the floor and ceiling plates with Big Stretch. It's perfectly allowable within the IRC and our local codes. But people on social media were giving us hell about not using fire caulk, so Elena was kind of concerned and she went out and bought some on her own and went ahead and sealed anything I hadn't done already with the fire caulk, and it's like cracking and chipping off now. It's really not a very quality product in my opinion, but it is what it is. Anyway, I think I gotta nudge this in just a little bit so that at least once the drywall gets on it, it can press it all flush. These are just little trim nails left over from some exterior work. Nice and low profile, shouldn't get in the way. Trim that back because we got one coming right up next to it. All right, to get this thing to work, I did have to put a fastener in this one side here just to keep these two from separating. That'll be able to get pushed in though when the drywall gets on there. It's pretty light force. I don't think it's gonna cause any issue with the drywall. Just not ideal, that's all. All right, we gotta seal up with this tape, the old trusty SureTape SF686. It's my go-to mastic foil tape. This guy looks good. Just gonna plug this hole with the trash bag, rinse and repeat for this one. That was easy.
Now it's time to get this hung up. There's basically two ways to go about this, either hanging it from chains from the ceiling or building a couple little feet for it as a sort of raised platform. I'm gonna go with the second option just because that's the easiest for me right now, and I can always hang it later once we have the drywall in this room. I've done quite a bit of measuring of the unit relative to where this pipe is going to be and where our supply trunk is going to be, which is basically right next to the return trunk. And so it's going to be mounted pretty high up on the wall. I'm using a rigid elbow on the end to turn the airflow down and into the unit, and I'll just use a very short piece of flex between that elbow and the stub coming out of the ceiling. So with that elbow figured in and where the feet of this unit are, I have found that I will need to actually accommodate that condensate drain up there in my mounting platform. Here's what I'm talking about. The stand for this is going to have to sit off the wall a little bit so that condensate drain can run between these two little blocks. So I'll make this little A-frame quick out of some wood and we'll get that hung up on the wall. That'll give us a good platform for the dehumidifier to sit on. Probably need something a little bit longer than that. Of course, the second mount falls not only over this angled pipe, but right over top my radon pipe too, which I have labeled right there. So I need to take special care that the screws do not penetrate all the way through the plywood. I'm using these 2-inch GRK cabinet screws left over from our window installs. They are just the right length without going too far. To get the spacing right on these, I measured between the mounting feet on the unit, and we are sitting right at about 15¼ inch, so that's how far I'm putting the brackets apart on the wall. And there we go, there's our mount. For the cherry on top, I took a piece of 1x and cored out some holes that are just slightly larger than the mounting feet, screwed them on here at the right spacing, and theoretically, this should keep anything from slipping off once those mounting feet are down in these little cups. This unit will vibrate a little bit, so I wanted to make sure I had something to sort of retain it where it was at.
There like little feet on it?
Yeah, there's little pucks. Underarm to overarm transition.
Okay. I just need to get it up there for a second.
It's just off. Get the pucks on the... Yeah, look at that.
That thing's not going anywhere.
She's in. This baby fit perfectly up on my mount, and it also is perfectly aligned with this guy right here. So that is good news. I'll just have a little piece of flex joining those two, and then on this side, it will go right into my supply trunk. I'll have my backdraft damper there, and another piece of flex to dampen the vibration. We have to switch gears a little bit now, because before we hook that up finally, we A, need to put our supply trunk in, and B, we need to put Siga, Myrex, and drywall on the ceiling. So let's flash forward to when we have that done. And by the magic of YouTube, we have drywall, we have paint, some temporary janky lighting, and we're ready to hook this guy up. So I can finally take my protection bags off. We also have our supply ductwork in, and here is the inlet for the dehumidifier. This is my backdraft damper. That's an 8-inch inlet into the supply trunk. The idea behind this backdraft damper is it's got this little butterfly valve on it. Air can only move that direction, in the direction of that arrow. That way, when the dehumidifier is not running and the supply trunk is pressurized from the main air handler, we're not pushing air backwards through the dehumidifier and up through that dehum return. It all goes to the supply branches. So I'll get this screwed and taped on there, and then we just have to bridge this little 1-foot gap here with a piece of 8-inch flex. It is recommended to put a piece of flex between any rigid ductwork and the unit, because this does cause some vibration, and if this is all rigidly connected, that vibration is more easily transmitted to your rigid ductwork. Same story for this guy up here, just gotta bridge that gap. That's only like 6 to 7 inches probably, so ideally you want 1 foot minimum, that's what the instructions say. But with where this unit had to sit in relation to the supply trunk to make sure this was a straight run, that is as close as I could get with that 90-degree elbow on there as well. This will be my very first time ever working with flex duct. This is literally the only piece of flex duct in the whole house, just this and the ERV connections. I'm really not a fan of it, especially when you're burying it behind drywall, because it's just like, feel this, it's just so thin and flimsy. Like, I can't imagine this is gonna last the lifetime of a house, and having to dig all this out behind drywall, it just sounds like an absolute nightmare. Also, cleaning it, if you ever wanna get your ducts clean, like if they run anything like a tool or anything down or a scope in the ducts, this is just, I just can't imagine it's gonna hold up long term. And it gathers dirt a lot more easy than a smooth piece of sheet metal will. But for vibration and sound dampening, it's fantastic, and it's pre-insulated. So there are pros and cons to everything, but on this project, I wanted to leave it in accessible areas only so it could always be replaced if ever needed. So this is a piece of 8-inch Quiet Flex, obviously R4.2 fiberglass insulation, and I needed to just cut about an 18-inch piece of it. I'm gonna cut the insulation a little bit longer than the actual tube itself. The inner lining needs to stop a little bit short so I can still wrap it with some tape to seal it, and there's little ledges, or beads I should say, that the inner lining has to go over top, but I need a little bit of extra fiberglass to go all the way up to the unit. So I'm gonna keep the insulation at 22 long and the jacketing at 18. I was able to get just this one piece of flex because I knew I didn't need much by just cold calling some HVAC contractors in the area and seeing if they would sell it to me for a few dollars. Otherwise, I'd have to buy like a whole 25-foot roll of this stuff, which would just be a waste. And it's not that cheap either. It's pretty expensive. So this was nice. I got just as much as I needed, and this is really even still too much. I only really needed, what, 22 inches? So barely half of this piece. I recessed this a little bit. Now if I measure my 22 inches, I should get 22 inches of insulation and about 18 inches of liner. And then these things have a piece of pretty stiff wire connecting them that you need a pair of diagonal cutters for. Actually, two pieces. One stiff, one not stiff. There we go. We're all taped up. Now I can put the zip ties on. I don't have the fancy super long zip ties. I think they're called Panduit straps, or the fancy gun to tighten them, because I wasn't gonna buy that for just a couple connections. So I'm gonna go the good old fashioned regular old zip tie route, daisy chain a couple of them together and tighten it down, trim the ends off, and that's gonna have to do. I think that'll work just fine for what we need to do here. Oh, am I gonna need a third one? Yep, sure will. Gonna make sure I'm on the other side of this little lip thing. And there is one side done minus the tape, which I'm going to leave off for now. I wanna just start this up and see how loud it is, and there's a chance we might want to replace our bottom mounts here with a hanging kit so that it dampens the vibration. It's apparently the biggest complaints about them. You know, I'm not surprised. It's got a compressor in it just like a refrigerator does, so it's always going to have some amount of vibration when that compressor is running, and then of course this has got a pretty big fan in it as well. So we're going to see how bad the vibration is from these rigid 2x4 mounts that I've made, and they have hanging kits if we need to go ahead and suspend this from the ceiling. There's I-joists right above it, and we'll hang it from chains. It should be pretty easy to hang it and then remove the supports if we need to. So let's move on to the second side here. This plastic bag has done a nice job protecting everything, keeping that filter nice and clean from construction dust. This is an even shorter piece of flex duct, and I'm gonna follow pretty much the same idea here, but I don't have the little ridge on these pieces of sheet metal duct like I did on the other side, so I'm just gonna tape it to these guys. Should be good to go. I'll put some screws in this and tape this guy on as well. There's number two. I did go ahead and throw a zip tie there. I taped that insulation up to that silver insulation that's hanging down up top, and went ahead and put some zip ties on this side as well. I think once we get it finalized, I'll come back and I'll tape this so you don't see any of that fiberglass insulation. But for now, that is all the ductwork that the dehumidifier needs. It's already got all the supply trunk ready to go. We just have to uncover the registers up there to get this thing to actually blow air up there, and we should be able to fire it up. Speaking of which, I did go ahead and wire up this 15 amp outlet here. This is a dedicated circuit just for this dehumidifier, and the dehumidifier just plugs in. I'm gonna go ahead and wire up the low voltage while I'm at it as well. It's 24 volt controls, and this thermostat wire runs to the same location as our main thermostat, so that's going to be wired in parallel with our main HVAC up there. I did some manual reading of our nice little ecobee thermostat here to figure out the best way to wire this up, because it does support an accessory, in our case a dehumidifier. And of course it also has to integrate with our Mr. Cool heat pump indoor and outdoor unit. So based on the Mr. Cool instructions, the ecobee instructions, and the dehum instructions, I think I put together my very primitive wiring diagram. And for the dehum, I think I legitimately only need one conductor from the accessory positive outlet of the ecobee down to the dehum outlet of the dehumidifier, which runs both the compressor and the fan at the same time. Honestly, the dehum instructions do not give much information at all, but it has its own 24 volt transformer included, and I think it should work if just a 24 volt signal comes to this dehum port. So I'll just strip one conductor from that 18/8 wire for now. It's got 8 conductors. So I have plenty of wires in case something ever happens and I need an extra, and wire that up to the dehum port terminal. Once I get my main air handler hooked up for the heat pump, I'll be ready to test this thing out.
I'm gonna go ahead and use the brown wire for this guy because after a quick Google search, that is one of the only colors in my bundle of 8 to choose from that is not one of the most commonly used HVAC colors. Like for all the standard stuff, like the fan control for the main air handler, or heating power, or common. So I'm gonna go ahead and use brown. It doesn't have any of those other meanings. All right, there's my one wire. If this does not turn on, I'll know I need to add another to the COM port here.
After some internet research, I figured out you can use the dehumidifier in either a 1 or 2 wire configuration. The 2 wire configuration takes 24 volts from the dehumidifier's built-in power supply up to the thermostat, which will then close a contact between its accessory ports to power on the dehum. With a 1 wire setup, on the other hand, you need to have a supply of 24 volts from another piece of equipment to power on the dehum. The ecobee had a setting during configuration to select whether you used 1 or 2 wires. There is one last connection I cannot forget about, which is this guy here. It's the condensate drain. It's a dehumidifier, takes water out of the air. That water's got to go somewhere. It drains out the bottom of the unit as liquid water. So this is a 3/4 inch male adapter that screws into the drain pan that's integrated in the bottom of the case here. And just outside this, I'll be putting this trap. It's a clear trap. I got this off supplyhouse.com, same exact one I used for the main air handler. But you're able to pop the tops open if you want to clean this out. They get kind of algae filled after a while, so you do need to clean them out or else they will clog up. But having the trap is necessary for this thing to actually blow properly and develop proper back pressure. Otherwise, this drain would more or less be an open hole into the system it's pulling return air from. So to plug that hole and still allow water to drain, you put a trap in. Teflon tape plus pipe dope equals the OG. Oh, Siri, what the? Siri has no clue what she's talking about. Teflon tape plus pipe dope is the OG leak-proof combo, in my opinion, and in my experience anyway. Another pro tip, this Blue Monster Teflon tape is seemingly more expensive than the cheap white little generic stuff that you get for 50 cents a spool, but this has like hundreds of feet. How many feet does it have? Okay, so this has 1,400 inches of tape. Those other ones have like 10 feet, like 120 inches or something like that. When you do the math, this is like half the price of the really cheap stuff. And it's probably better, I don't know, probably all the same crap, to be honest, but it feels a little bit more durable anyway, a little bit thicker. And then I also use their brand Blue Monster pipe dope as well. And this can has lasted me literally all the plumbing on this whole project. But doing this has yielded me 0 leaks so far that couldn't be corrected anyway, with just a little bit of extra tightening. Most of my leaks happen to be a result of me forgetting to tighten the thing, go figure. As always, I'm gonna try to dry fit the whole thing before I put any glue on anything. This condensate drain wraps up the install and we are now ready to fire this baby up. We'll do a full video on the startup of not only this dehumidifier, but also the ERV and ducted heat pump. As always, thanks for watching and we'll see you on the next one.